health and safety for anyone who's not from here. Emergency exits are over there. If there's an emergency, calmly go that way. And now Bobby's going to introduce us to our speaker today.
Kia ora, could we please stand for the karakia? Cameron will lead us in the karakia. Nā reira I runga anō I tērā no ngā krakia whakataka te hau. Whakapuarea kia nā rai wa tātou ngākau, wa tātou hine ngaro, kia whakarongo ngā taringa, kia whakaritea ngā whakaro I raro I ngā kōrero ka tai mai nei te kai kōrero rangatira. Nā reira e timatāna I runga anō hoki te whakaro pai, Gloria ki tatu e runga rawa, mau ngā rongo ki te whenua he whakaro pai ki ngā tangata katoa. Ko te whare e tū nei tāmaki painga hira, I runga anō hoki te maunga o te kawa, ko Ngāti Whātua te mana whenua, I raro anō hoki ngā manaakitanga o te taumata aiwi, a rā ko Waikato Tainui Tērā, me Ngāti Pawa. E mihi ana ki tō tātou kingi, ka kingi tū heitia, e noho mai nei runga te ahureo o na mātua tūpuna, rire, pai mārire, hau māri. Nā reira, kia tātou rā, ko tau mai nei, ki te pōhiri rā I tēnei o ngā manuhiri. Haere mai ki raro I te tuanua tō mātou whare tāmaki painga hira. Ka kite au, ka rongo au I ngā kōrero mau o tai mai nei. Ka tino whakamiharo a hau ki ngā pūkenga kei roto I tō kite. Nā reira haere mai pīkau hia mai ngā tini āhuatanga. Mai anō rā I Ngāti Parau, te whānau apanui, me ngai tahu, a rā kaitahu. Te mea hoki mai au I kaitahu I nā pōne, ko tō maunga o reira ko Aoraki, e kōrero mai ana ki te maunga o Hikurangi, e kōrero mai ana hoki ki ngā maunga o kone I ko maunga whau tēnei E tuatungi. Nā reira, haere mai, tau mai. Ngā mihi hoki ki o tātou tini aitua ngā mate he wainganui a tātou. Haere rātou, tātou te hingora, tēnā koutou, tēnā no rā tātou katoa. It's not a translation, but I think it's an important explanation. I want to acknowledge the krakia that we had this morning. Whakataka te hau ki te uru. It's about calling in the wind, the breezes of life, to open our ears, to open our eyes, to open our minds, and open our hearts to what's before us. And so we're blessed with that krakia this morning. But it is a special privilege to stand here and welcome Maru Nihoniho from our special visitor this morning. I flew back from Dunedin last night and I picked up the Air New Zealand magazine, and guess who's in the magazine there? Our guest speaker this morning. I got a call from one of our people here to say, was I available, and how can I say no, because I think it's such a privilege to have a speaker such as Maru in here with us today. And so I spoke, and the mihi that I gave is to welcome Maru on behalf of Tāmaki Paingahira, on behalf of our taumata aiwi, our people that are here, and also pay respects to all our loved ones that we carry within our hearts. May they rest in peace, but let us enjoy this day and welcome Maru to our special place. Nā reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā no rā koe e te tuhine te whaka. Could we stand for our waiata? And you all say now, what's the waiata? Oh yeah, e tu mai. E toru ngā mea, I'll say the line and you just repeat it. Just don't sing on the same note, just if somebody can harmonise, or I don't care if it's up or down, but a bit of harmony is like, Nā reira, tēnā no rā tātou. E toru ngā mea, ngā mea nunui, e ki ana, pai pera, tu mana ko, whakapono, ko te mea nui, ko te aroha, ko te aroha. There are three main things in Bible and the principles of life is tūmanako, whakapono and aroha, and the greatest of those is aroha. Aroha ki o tātou manuhiri, aroha ki te whenua, aroha ki a tātou ki te tangata, aroha ki te atua. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. Anyway, kia ora.
Ngā mihi, Bobby. Thank you so much for that beautiful mihi, and thank you for asking me to come here and speak with you today, and thank you for being here as well. I got up and sang, so I didn't have to get up by myself and sing, because I can't sing. That is one skill I don't have, the skill of being able to sing. But anyway, I'm here today to talk to you about what I do in my business, what I've been doing for the last 16 years, things that have changed and for the better, and the type of games that we're doing. And most of the games that we do now do have a learning objective or a serious outcome. So I'll just go through quickly some of my company's background. So Metia, we're based in Auckland, down in Wynyard Quarter. I started the business back in 2003, so quite some time ago, with the aim of making big, huge, entertaining games on the PlayStation and Xbox and Nintendo, because those were the three platforms at the time. So the mobile market was non-existent. The only game that you could play on your phone was Snake, Solitaire, maybe even Pong. So the mobile market was not there. The market were not even the customers, not even the gamers. The market was the three publishers, or three manufacturers, I should say. And at that time, it was very difficult to get into the industry. I mean, extremely difficult. To be able to develop a game for PlayStation, Xbox or Nintendo, you had to be approved. If they didn't approve you, then there was no way you could develop for them. But fortunately, we did have some luck. Well, I wouldn't say luck, because it was a lot of hard work and a lot of planning and scheming to get in there. But we did work with Sony for a long time to be able to be approved and eventually develop for them. Oops, okay, I'm jumping ahead. There we go. So one thing I do want to touch upon, which does come through our games, is our kaupapa. So how we work, and not necessarily just how we work, but what we incorporate into our values and within the company that comes through our games as well. So, as you know now, I mean, as a lot of people know now, games aren't just about playing. You know, they're just not there for entertainment purposes anymore, although they can still be when you're trying to get a learning objective through. Because that's the whole point of games, to be able to give someone a game that they can pick up and play and enjoy and learn as they're playing. So you learn by doing. And the other side of what we do is not just give our kids games where they can see themselves reflected back through the game, whether that's through te reo or whatever else we're teaching through the game, cultural elements, but to give them the confidence that they can actually do what I do. I mean, they can do what I do today if they really had the time and the tools to do that. All the resources are online and they're free. Most of them are free. You've just got to take the time to learn them. And so if you have a great idea, there's every possibility in the world that you can bring that idea to life. It's just time. So I have a big focus now on telling Indigenous stories, in particular Māori stories. There's power in stories, no matter what platform it is, whether it's a game, a book, or a movie. If you can tell that story well and ensure that there are, that the learning objectives you want to get through are coming through, it's the same challenges we have on the gaming platform. I guess the Māori values that come in, through our team is like manaakitanga. We all work together. We have to work together as a team, because some of the subject matter that we are developing for is big. It's just not, let's make a maths game. It's, well, let's make a maths game where our rangatahi feel, it's in the right space for them. Is it in te reo? Are there elements in this game where they can say, hey, this feels like it's made for me? So it's a lot of thought behind that. Also within our team, it's very important we embrace kotahitanga, because sometimes some of our team members have large parts of a project, and sometimes our team members have very small parts, but we're still a team. So I tell the team, own it. Don't be shy to say, you worked on that game. Even if you had a small part in it, your contribution was important. Because I've been through that experience where some of my team said, well, I only worked a little bit on that game, so I don't tell anyone I worked on it. Why? Why don't you tell? Be proud. Own it. Of course, kaitiakitanga, where we ensure that our own team is well looked after, but this is more about duty of care and some of the content that we're working on, to ensure that if you don't understand it, then we'll embrace each other to understand it, and also do our best to protect it along the way. So we won't go and do anything, silly with it or change it. We'll look after it. And of course, whanaungatanga, rera whānau, not just within the team, but with any third party that we work with. So we work with the University of Auckland on one of our games. We worked together as a team. There was a whānau element within that team where we got to know each other really well, and we still have good connections to this day. Rangatiratanga, being able to, I guess, from our team's point of view, the self-determination, the independence that we have, developing these games, to say that that comes back, I guess, a long time ago, when I was told in my early days that girls don't make games, and Māoris don't make games, Māori are not very technological people, and all this kind of stuff. I've heard it all, you won't believe it. And for me, that's like, well, okay, I can either listen to that and let it sink in, or I can just deflect it off and still walk my path and move ahead. So those values are really important, not just for the company, but for me and for whoever we work with. And of course, knowledge. Gaining knowledge, learning never stops. We're learning new stuff every day. No sooner have we learnt one plugin or platform or whatever, and a new one pops up. So it never stops. And it's also learning about the cultural themes that we are involved with on a daily basis. So, our first game, nothing to do with any of that. And that's because in my early days, I was very concentrated on really getting my foot in the door and trying to figure out, how do I become a Sony registered or licensed developer and get into the international market. So a lot of time was spent just developing the early part of my business. So basically, in a nutshell, after 2 years, I had success with a publisher, and we published our first game, which is Cube, this one here, to the international market. And it was published worldwide, And New Zealand was the last country to get it. In fact, New Zealand wasn't going to get it. Our publisher thought our market was just way too small and not worth the effort. But I convinced them to send, a couple of hundred copies down. And they did, and as soon as they went into the warehouse in Noel Leemings or wherever they went, I was straight down there, picked up a box off the shelf. I didn't take a selfie because, it was back then, but had a photo done, and it was like, very, very exciting because I had gone through 2 years of pitching this, and I was running out of money really fast, really, really fast, and so to have this game published, or funded and published, was, I guess, my first success, but really a sigh of relief because, if I didn't get this contract, then I probably wouldn't have had much choice but to stop doing what I was doing, and I wouldn't be here today. So this is a puzzler game, and it's really guiding a cube around a 3D platform, and you've got to get to the end. Okay, now remember this game, because what I've done when I get to it, you'll see, is I've reused the mechanics of this game. So the mechanics are, you're a cube that roll along a qubit platform to collect items and get to the end goal. The quirky thing in this game is that the world flips. So the world flips over and you're able to then navigate around the underside of the platform. So, while I was being interviewed on BFM, just after the release of the Cube game, there was an investigator up at the University of Auckland who was looking for an Auckland-based game developer, and they were hoping to find a woman Auckland-based game developer, and they thought it would be really great if they could find a Māori woman Auckland-based game developer. They just happened to hear me being interviewed on BFM, talking about the Cube game. And then once they'd heard me, and they got in touch. And from there we had a meeting, and it was about developing a game targeting rangatahi that have presented with mild depression. And it would be based on cognitive behavioural therapy, and it would be designed to look like a PlayStation 1 or 2 game. Because at that time, back in 2007-8, PlayStation 2 was out, on just heading into PlayStation 3. So we were targeting that look. Anyway, we worked together for about a year on developing the Sparks game. It then went into clinical trial, and then it came out being published in the British Medical Journal. And I guess the outcome was that the Sparks game was just as effective as treatment as usual. So that showed that you can computerise therapy, and it can work. So Sparks was never intended to replace therapy as usual. It's intended to be an additional tool that our young people can access when we obviously have a huge shortage of clinicians out there. So this is available online. It's available on the App Store and Google Play as well, and it's free to play. All the games that I'm showing you today, apart from Cube, are free to play and downloadable from both stores. But the really cool thing about this was my first serious game. So it's like, whoa, when they came to me and said, we'd like you to develop a game that's going to help rangatahi Māori with mild depression, I was like, never made a game like that before. Well, in fact, I'd only made one game before that, and that was called Cube. But, we had our cordial on, we discussed our strengths and knowledge and weaknesses and all that together with a clinical team up at the university and myself, and just combined our powers and worked together and made this happen. So it was a really good collaboration. That's when a lot of what I talked about earlier on with our Māori values came in, because we had to become kaitiaki of the knowledge we were handling, handle it with a huge, duty of care to make sure that we're doing this the best way possible. We had to work together, the kōtahitanga. So all those elements started coming together through the development of this game. And also, the development of this game got me thinking, actually, why do I want to make games? Because games are a powerful platform. It's immersive, it's interactive. We're making sparks, which is teaching something really important. And I started to think, okay, maybe I'm just not making games for entertainment only. Maybe I'm going to start making games that educate or have a meaningful outcome in some way. And so basically after the development of Sparks, that's where my direction or my focus went to, developing meaningful games, and specifically for rangatahi Māori. Anyway, Sparks went on to win a couple of awards there, a United Nations award and a UNESCO award. And I was like, I never expected that to happen ever. I mean, this was only my second game I'd ever done. And it went and won 2 UN-ish awards, those really big things. I was like, oh, that's so cool. Now I'm leading into the meaningful aspects of games that we've done. Māori Power Wars, this was our first game that we designed to be translated fully into Reo Māori, but not only that, it features a lot of Māori themes and characters, especially from our mythology. So basically what Māori Power Wars is, it's a strategic tower defence game. So you protect your power sites from invading enemies like giant weta or other warriors. There's giant katipo in there and more, and it's all fantastical and all that. And in fact, I don't like playing the levels with the giant katipo in it, because when they eat you, it's like, so I dodge those levels, but the kids love it. Our rangatahi love it. This has been a very popular game, downloaded thousands and thousands of times from both stores, and it's almost like a badge of honour for our rangatahi. Whenever I'm at a school or wherever doing a presentation, afterwards I'll come up and go, "Whai, I've got your game on my phone." And I can see the little icon. I'm like, "Oh, ka pai. We clocked it. Where's Power Wars 2? And I'm like, you know what? I said, if you want to see Power Wars 2, why don't you make it? Why don't you give it a go? You can do it. And they're like, oh, no, it's too hard. That's really going to be, I have to learn heaps. I said, yeah, you have to learn. I said, but you can make Power Wars 2 yourself. And then it will be, how the way you want to see it. And I even offered, I said to them, I will give you some of our assets, from our game to let you have a tutu with it so you can get familiar, with not have to worry about designing graphics, but you get familiar with the game engine side of things and become knowledgeable and, and upskill to that level where you can make these games yourself, and I'll give you the graphics to help you along. And they're like, yeah, cool. But I'm still to hear from one of our rangatahi that want to take on that challenge. But we will work on Power Wars 2 maybe next year. Yeah, we're just thinking about what the new scenery is going to be and what the different objectives of the game will be. But it's been a very, very popular game. And because we targeted a genre that is popular with rangatahi, so tower defence. I mean, we know that Fortnite is, but there's no way in the world we can build that game. So we'll need zillions of dollars for that. But, low-hanging fruit, just say, okay, well, this is another popular game that our kids like, so let's do this. So this is also free to play on both stores as well. Now, remember Cube at the beginning? What we did was we took the gameplay and mechanics from the Cube game, because we had already made it well, essentially we had already made it, it was coded. However, when we were making Cube, we built our own engine. When we made this game, Tākaro, we used the Unity engine. So we thought initially we'll just port Cube into Unity, but it didn't work like that. We actually had to rebuild most of it inside Unity. And so it wasn't exactly a time saver, but it did save a little bit of time. What it did do was already give us the mechanic for the game. So what we did was took the gameplay mechanic and wrapped a new idea around it. And the new idea was to teach rangatahi what are coding concepts and how do you use them. So what is an if, what is a while, what is a nested loop, what is a loop. You know, it doesn't teach them how to code, like actual script and that. It won't teach you how to be a C++ open environment programmer or anything like that. But what it will do is give you the understanding about what code is and how do you use it. So it's like a seed before you go and learn how to code. And the reason why I did this game is because I decided to go and do my master's about 2 years ago, over 2 years ago. And that was the master's at Tech Futures Lab. And Newmarket was part of Unitech at that time. And it was a master's in technological futures. And I've always seen this problem, you know, being Māori and being in the games industry or the tech industry, and only one of very few women, let alone Māori woman, in tech. And so looking at that, it was like, oh, never mind just Māori women, just Māori in general. You know, it's only 2.5% of our working population is working in some area in technology. So I thought, well, how can we reach our kids to get them to understand that they can be part of this industry as well? It's not that far away from what they're doing now. If they can control the iPads and Androids and everything else, and they use it all the time, then it's just a little step closer where they could be developing for these platforms. So this game was part of my solution for the problem during my master's. I was like, how do we encourage rangatahi Māori into, I guess, careers in technology? So this game was like a tool to show them if they can complete the levels within this game, then they can do that in real life. You know, they can control a robot, because that's how you control robots, is by giving them commands and telling them what to do. And if they see that they can do this in the gaming environment and build that confidence to be able to bring it into the real world, then, okay, cool. You know, let's build these type of tools where it's really hands-on and it's immersive and you can just discover and learn as you're going through. It's self-paced, you know, you're not assessed. You are assessed by solving the puzzles or the levels. And so it's a confidence-building tool as well. I got ethics for that. That was a real pain, but I needed to get it because I had to get it into schools for our kids to test. So about 500 rangatahi tested the game, and then I built it for the App Store and Google Play. So it's up there now. It's free to play as well. And it's got ads in this one. The first time we tutored with ads in our games. So not too bad, you know, you just have to watch a 30-second ad and that's all. It's not going to make us billionaires, unfortunately. But yeah, it's a tool much like Sparks that will, where you learn by playing or you learn by doing. So, oh yes, and sorry, that came out with really positive results too. Oh, I'll just go back to this screen. What I did to get my baseline data was I gave Tākaro to a high decile school where they were already learning technology. They already had all the hardware at their disposal. They were already interested in a career into technology. So I gave them the game first, because I needed a baseline. And, I did my research, and that came back, and then basically, in a nutshell, those rangatahi that, and they weren't rangatahi either. They were mainstream kids. It showed that they, after playing tākaro, their interest had increased in learning technology, but also in learning more about interactive technology. And I didn't expect that, because I thought, well, these kids are already learning tech. They're already playing with robotics, and they're already doing 3D printing and all that. They're probably going to be like, oh, this game is dumb. Because we already know about coding concepts and things like this. But as it turned out, their interest had increased after playing tākaro, because I think it just showed them a different point of view of tech. Anyway. And of course, the passion project. This was actually the first game I was pitching when I started Metia Interactive. It was the very first game. At that time, it was called Guardian, and featured this wahine toa called Maya. And I was taking that overseas with me whenever I went to GDC and E3 and all those other big gaming conferences, and pitching it to potential publishers and funders. And while they loved the idea and wanted to know more, they were unsure about me, because I didn't, at that time, have a developer heritage. So I hadn't made a game before, basically. And so they thought, well, you can give us the idea and we'll get another developer to make it, or come back to us when, you've got a few games under your belt, and we'll talk then, just to show that I could actually develop a game. So anyway, it didn't happen back then. I had a few hit and misses. I had signed up with a film company that wanted to take this into the movie market about 7 years ago. Oh, sorry, no, it would have been about 9 years ago. And that was a 5-year joint venture. Nothing happened there. The joint venture finished, ran out, expired, and the rights came back to me back in 2012. And since then, I've been chipping away at the story. And what I did do was applied for some funding from the Film Commission, as they had an interactive fund open, and was successful in getting that to help build a narrative strategy around the Guardian project. Initially, we were developing this interactive strategy for internal use only, as a backbone of our larger game. And then I decided to turn it into an app and release it to the public, so I could start building an audience and getting feedback on the story, which was great, because that worked really well. It cost me a bit of extra money to do that, but it was worth the effort, because now what I have is, actually I released it for feedback, but all the feedback so far has been really positive, and what I've been looking for is negative. So it hasn't been very helpful, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, we must be on the right track then with the story, because you always look for the negative or critical feedback, so you can make changes and adjust as you go. But apart from one on the App Store, which had nothing to do with the story, had everything to do with race, which was pretty sad, basically saying it's a racist game. I was like, and put more Europeans in it. I was like, oh, I didn't get it. I was just like, okay. So I just replied to that review and said, have a nice day, because I don't know what else to say. It's like, okay. I did think of other things to say, but just wanted to keep it nice. So I said, kia pai tō rā, and whatever. Because I didn't understand it. Nobody could understand it apart from, it had racial tones in there. And apart from that, it's been received really well. And most of our downloads are not from New Zealand, they're from overseas, which is really, really surprising. So what I did was I released it. It's grown organically. I don't have a marketing budget for it. It's social media because it's free, you know. So it's sort of like, okay, let's see what happens. So it's a big kind of experiment, I guess, for me to see what happens with this project. However, episode 1 is released. Episode 2 is about to, or the conclusion is about to be released before this Christmas, I hope. We've got a few technical things to sort out. And so episode 1 is free, episode 2, we're putting a price on it. And I was going to release that for free too. And the only reason I was going to do that is because initially this was just an internal document for us. But as it turns out, people are actually enjoying it. But I've been advised by a lot of people is don't you dare put it out there for free because it'll undervalue your work and your mahi. And everyone will be like, well, why is the second one free? You know, is something wrong with it? And that. So I thought, okay, I will monetize on my next one. So it's a conclusion to this story. And I don't know if anyone here has read it, but it is 2 parts. The feedback I've had from, not from reviews, but from emails, are from people who have downloaded the game and got to a point in the combat stages where they can't make it through any further because they keep dying. And they asked me for cheat codes and because they want to keep reading the story. And so I give them some hints and that. But some of the requests have been, can you please just make this a book without the interactive? Because I'm not a gamer and I find it really difficult. But I want to read the story because I've got to this point and I want to know what happens. But I'm having trouble passing, you know, and things like that. So what I thought is, because we already have the images and the structure and all that there, we are thinking about doing a linear story for it, but there are 3 different endings, so that's the problem. And that's what I explained to people. There are actually 3 different endings based on your choices within the gaming environment. So you control Maya, you get her through this world, but you meet characters along the way or you engage in combat along the way, which determines, or based on your choice, what kind of consequence that leads to. So it's like a olden style game book, back in the old, not the old days, but before, where it's like pick a path type of book. So it's really hard to bring it into a linear story unless we say, okay, we'll do that version, that ending. So there's a few people out there like, can you please make this a book or a comic, and a couple of requests to make a film. But yeah, can't even make a game, so the film's going to be whenever that happens. But this story encompasses all the Māori values and themes as well. So if Maya engages in combat with, we call them a manga in the game, which is like a forest troll, but it's not really a troll because troll gives the wrong image. A manga is based on the barracuda fish. And so anyway, if she engages in combat with this character and kills it, then she will do a karakia over the character over the creature, wishing it well on its next life and thanking it for this life. You know, those sort of things that capture parts of how we do and karakia over certain things in the forest or whatever, because she's a guardian as well. She's not afraid to fight, guardian. So this is really all about a story about resilience and motivation and getting from one point to another. And I just noticed that time is coming up quick. This game we're working on right now is an AR game. It's called Orako. We're bringing the pā to life as it was during the battle at that time. And so the pā was unfinished. It had to be built really quickly. and we give the player the opportunity to have a look at the landscape around the pā and make choices as well around decisions, so you can look at both sides of the story and it tells the story, the actual story, what happened here. This is in development in about 2 weeks from being finished, and we made this for Ministry of Education. There are 4 other games there that we've made for them as well, but I didn't want to make my presentation too long and pick this game out because this is historical, factual, and based on a real situation that happened. And it's really important to tell our history, our New Zealand history here. So this game also will be available online, free to play. So every single one of these games is downloadable and free to play. The series of games that we developed, especially this one for Orako, was very special. We worked very closely with our story writer, whose idea it is to bring this to life. There was so much discussion about the authenticity of the look of the pā. We had our concept artist draw the pā initially with palisades, only to be told that the pā did not have that many palisades. It was still being built as it was rushed. And so we've had a lot of backs and forths because we just want to do it as close as possible to our story writer's vision, you know, how they want to tell the story. And so, yeah, it's been, very cool to work on this. And I mean, in the sense of telling a story that is really important to the history of New Zealand as well. And I can see the time is ticking, so I'm just going to skip to this page. So if you wish to, you can, those are the links to download, any one of those games, or all of those games, they're all there. And so I better leave some time for questions, because I can see we're running out of time quickly. Yeah.
So we have about 10 minutes or so for questions now, so if anyone's got any questions, just indicate to me and I'll bring you the mic so everyone can hear.
Mm.
It came up a few times, and now moving forward with future games, is that something that you will definitely have to put in, or is it still a real balancing act between is it going to be a free game or is it going to be logo with ads?
It will be, so we're going to try a new model soon, which is the storybooks I was telling you before, where people are requesting, can you just make this a book instead of the interactive element? We're going to give it a go because we do have the assets there. It's just time for us. So what we're going to do is develop the app, and inside the app there will be about 12 chapters. And we're going to give chapter 1 away for free. And then if they want to buy the chapters after that, then they can. Or it might be the first 2 or first 3 chapters that are free, and then it's a roadblock and you pay $3.99, $1.99, 99 cents. I don't know the price tag yet until we start developing, and then work out our return on investment, I suppose, as to what the cost will be. There's all sorts of ways to monetize, you know, in the game or in games and apps, because initially I came from an old school model of publisher, you know, way back then, and then the mobile market just went boom. It was like, shock to the system for everybody, including developers like us, because now we can self-publish. We don't need a publisher. Now we've got the burden of having to publish ourselves, which includes the marketing, the monetization, you know, or premium, however it goes. It's really, developers have now become marketers as well. It's hard, yeah. I think one of the biggest problems is our parents don't know, and of course you can't promote what you don't know. And so one of the hard things, because I'll go to kura and I'll talk to right from our babies right up to our rangatahi, and most of the time they're like, oh, look, their eyes are wide open, like, do you make games? Like, they can't believe it. And, and also it's like, do people make games in New Zealand? It's like, yeah. They just think that all the games that they play are coming from America or not from New Zealand. That's quite a common theme, with any kids at school. So when they find out that games are actually made in New Zealand, some of the big games are made in New Zealand, and that's surprising to them. But then even more when I come in and start talking about gaming and games, and they're like, "Oh, you made Power Wars game," and then they connect it, like, "Oh," and so it's hard because from me and a lot of my friends that are Māori that are working around tech, we know and we can encourage our kids. Funnily enough, my oldest two have got no interest in tech at all, apart from social media and that, but they've got no interest in gaming or tech, but my youngest, my 10-year-old does. So in that respect, I can encourage him, which I do. He's learning to hack at the moment. So I have to keep an eye over his shoulder and make sure he's not doing anything that he shouldn't be. But little hacks like hacking Roblox, to get more credits or whatever. And I don't tell him off for it, but I just watch him to make sure and I talk to him about it. Be careful, don't do this, IP addresses and, and all that. And he's like, he gets it. And he's, I'm not going to do anything silly like that. And I went, well, don't, because I'll get in trouble, not you. And because if you tell them off for tutuing or playing, then it'll put them off. Or it'll either put them off or they'll just do it behind your back. So it's better to be open about it and watch them and monitor them and, right, get off now, you've had enough time, go on trampoline or go outside and play. You really have to get down in there with them. Now, for the parents that don't know, or for ones that do know, the best way to encourage, especially our girls, a severe lack of women in tech anyway, and Māori women in tech is, tiny, is to show them, I think the easiest way is to show them the people that are out there doing it now. And also to say that it's well within your reach to do that, especially nowadays, especially with YouTube and all sorts of resources being online, free to download, free to use, but also in terms of education, depending on which side of technology they want to be on, whether that's creative or coding side, then it's like, okay, coding, maths, science, what else can you take? Maths and science, physics, I suppose. And if it's creative, art, anything art, technical drawing, art in general, or even home economics where you did what do you call it? Where you made woodwork and things. Anything that gets the hands on and working. Because that all leads into, the stream that eventually you'll go into. So it's about encouraging them into the right paths, probably at intermediate rather than high school. Get them inspired at that age, or even younger when they're still at primary school. Kia ora. Kia ora, everyone.
Great. Maru, I just want to thank you so much on behalf of Tamaki Pāngahere for coming in and talking to us and sharing your amazing work with us and inspiring us about the amazing work that you're doing. So thank you.
I'm one of those parents that sometimes moan about my grandchildren, my own children, spending all their time on these games. And so I've just learned something today because one of my grandsons locks himself in the room and he can be there all day. And they go, come on, you need to get outside, you know, it's a bit of fresh air. But, oh man, I know I'm starting to download some of these and you'll be learning. So thank you again, Maru, it's just been fantastic. We're just going to finish off with a krakia. Kia hora te marino, ke whakapapa paunamu te moana, ke tere te kārohirohi. May the calm be widespread, may the waters glisten like the green stone, and may the sun bring warmth and happiness across your pathway. Tēnā koutou, and again, give us a big hand for our manuhiri. Kia ora, back to work.